Hello there. Once again, I've turned up without a glass of wine, simply because I'm filming this as an introduction to a tasting that I recorded on a plane. This was a trip between Rome and Dubai, flying with Emirates in one of their Boeing 777s in economy class. And I think it's fair to say that in economy class, there's not a lot of space to record a tasting. I was fortunate I had a row to myself, and therefore I wasn't impinging too much on the travellers surrounding me. But actually, under those circumstances and tasting from a plastic cup, I was actually really impressed by the wine I was offered. And the wine was from the family of J M Cazes, or Jean-Michel Cazes, and it was their Domaine de l'Ostal Grand Vin Cru La Liviniere 2023. And I'm talking about the Famille J M Cazes. Jean-Michel Cazes was a huge figure in Bordeaux, owning the legendarily overachieving fifth growth Lynch Bages, and his influence was really at its height in the 1990s and through the first decade of the 2000s. Now, Jean-Michel's grandfather had purchased Chateau Lynch Bages in Pauillac in 1935, having been a tenant farmer there. And then subsequently, Jean-Michel's father, André, purchased the other Médoc chateau that the family owns, Chateau Les Ormes du Pez in Saint-Estèphe, and he purchased that in 1940. Now, Jean-Michel started working with his father in 1973, and in 1986, due to a friendship he had, he ended up becoming the chief executive of AXA Millesemes, so the wine arm of AXA, the French insurance group. And that put him in a position where he ended up revitalising the fortunes of the Pauillac second growth, Chateau Pichon Longueville Baron. The list of Cazes' achievements is enormous. In 1988, he bought Chateau Bel Air in the Grave. In 1989, he started a hotel at Cordeillan Barges in Pauillac, which today I think is generally acknowledged to be one of the best places to stay in the area. In 1990, he launched a branded Bordeaux, Michel Lynch. He started a venture called Rocket Cazes in the Douro Valley in Portugal. He invested in the Tapanapra estate in Coonawarra, along with Bollinger and Brian Crozer, remaining involved there until 2014. Now, it was about 2006 that Jean-Michel Cazes stepped back, and his son Jean-Charles took over running the family business. They've subsequently bought a property in Châteauneuf-du-Pape. They've started some major renovations in the Barges village around the hotel, and as recently as 2017, they bought the Pauillac fifth growth chateau au Batailley. Unfortunately, Jean-Michel Cazes passed in 2023, but he leaves behind a huge legacy, and I guess I really ought to tie this into how this affected the wine I tried on my flight between Rome and Dubai. Because in 2002, the other thing that the family did was that they bought Domaine l'Ostal in the Minervois in Mediterranean southwest France. Evidently, an Ostal in the old Oc language denotes both a family and also the sort of the dwelling place where they reside. So in fact, what Jean-Michel Cazes did was he found two adjacent domains with really good terroir, right in the heart of what was a relatively newly formed cru within the Minervois, La Liviniere. I think the cru had been authorised 3 years prior to that in 1999. So here the location is at the bottom of the Montagne Noire. Combining these two domains gave them 150 hectares of land, of which 60 were planted with vines, and there are further 25 hectares of olive groves. And in fact, I think it's fair to say that Jean-Michel Cazes, as he was in so many other areas, was being quite pioneering here. At this stage, there were one or two outside investors in the Minervois. For instance, Bertie Eden was making wine there at that stage, but Cazes predates and grows investment here by about 4 years. And the vines here grow on the slopes of what's called the Petit Causse, where all the vines are on a single hillside facing south. The estate underwent a complete restructuring after purchase, so drainage work was done and planting was done with the varieties ordered according to the different terroirs of the different plots that they'd identified. A year later, in 2003, they bought an old tile factory, Tuileries Saint-Joseph, and this is a stunning 19th century building, and this has become their technical winemaking base. As I say, the terroir here, particularly within La Liviniere, is regarded as being exceptional. So the vineyards are surrounded by green oaks and cypress trees on a hillside in one homogeneous block with a south-facing exposure. The soils here are a mosaic of shallow marls over chalky sandstone. It was 2004 that they bottled their first wines here, and they've been certified as HVE3, which is High Environmental Value certification, since 2017. So that's certification that's recognising the estate's commitment to biodiversity and environmentally friendly practices. It was only as recently as 2022 that La Liviniere has been granted the right to produce wines under its own name rather than having to append its name to that of Minervois. So previously this wine had been made as a Minervois La Liviniere. With regard to the winemaking here, all the fruit is hand-picked and will be very carefully sorted. They say that for the Grand Vin, they're using only about 30% of what they pick. Picking and vinification is done parcel by parcel. Fermentation takes place in temperature-controlled concrete and stainless steel tanks. Fermentation is accompanied by regular pump-overs, remontage, to aid extraction, and the period in which maceration is allowed to go on for is between about 20 and 23 days. So they are looking for quite a lot of extraction there. The blend for this vintage is listed on the back label as being 70% of Syrah with 10% each of Grenache, Carignan and Mourvedre. We're told it ages for 12 months in French oak barrels, but these barrels had been used for 2 previous vintages, so third use barrels. I do make a summation at the end of the tasting, but frankly, this is a wine I was very impressed to find myself tasting in economy class on a flight. So all credit to Emirates for listing and offering this wine. I will just briefly apologise for the fact that the video is recorded in an economy class seat on a plane. Thus, I hope you will forgive some of its deficiencies as far as the quality of the video and the sound. But I do hope that won't stop your enjoyment of the tasting, because I thought this was an impressively high quality wine to find in these circumstances. So thank you for joining me, and I hope you enjoy the tasting. Hi, I'm on a flight with Emirates between Rome and Dubai, and we're currently somewhere over the eastern Mediterranean, probably nearing Cyprus. And the wine I have in my economy class plastic cup here is actually really exciting. The wine is a Grand Vin from the La Liviniere Cru, appellation La Liviniere, produced by the J M Cazes family, and it's called Ostal. So traditionally, La Liviniere was the best cru within the Minervois appellation, and now it actually has its own appellation status. The Cazes family own a number of properties throughout France, but having just tasted this, I think this is a really exciting wine, and I wanted to share it with you. Looking at it, it's got a really lovely deep dark colour, sort of a black, purple, ruby. It's keeping its colour quite well to the rim, and it's virtually opaque. Let's see what I make of the aromas. The aromas, as best as I can get from this cup, are rich, they're meaty, they're spicy, but really they're just absolutely packed with ripe fruit. So you've got no ripeness, dark cherries, through overripe fruit to notes of raisin, currant, and actually almost sort of black olive notes. There are wonderfully bright, concentrated aromas. So let's have a taste. On the palate it is rich. It's labelled as having 14.5% alcohol. And certainly there's a degree of warmth to go along with the ripe fruit. And again, there are notes of overripe black olives, prunes, almost a sort of a leatheriness on the mid-palate, following up on some really sort of juicy, ripe black cherry and black plum fruit. There's a delicate spiciness and actually quite a nice acidity that it's keeping the wine lively to the finish. The tannins, not surprisingly given the wine's ripeness, are supple and rounded. So actually it's those spicy notes, perhaps a tiny touch of oak, probably older oak. It's giving a spiciness and a little bit of structure to the finish. I did review a Côte de Roussillon Village on my flight out here from Chapoutier, which I thought was quite an exciting wine to see in economy class on a flight like this, but I did wonder whether that was a bit challenging. This, on the other hand, I find equally impressive, but I think warmth, its richness, its roundness, probably makes it more approachable for a larger number of flyers. But personally, I think this is a wine with intensity, with complexity, with character, with concentration. I would very happily give this 90 out of 100. It's a wine that I wouldn't mind having a few bottles in my cellar and coming back to over the next 3 or 4 years. I'll leave a link in the notes to the Wine Searcher webpage for this vintage of this wine, so you can see if it's available near you and also at what price. And frankly, I presume this is going to be a great value for money wine. So thank you so much for watching. I do hope you've enjoyed the video. If you have, do please press the like button, that would be fantastic. If you have friends you think might like to watch the video, do please pass it on to them. I'd appreciate your endorsement of what I'm trying to do in that way. And if you are watching these videos and you haven't subscribed yet, do please sign up, subscribe to my channel, set yourself an alert, and make sure that you're notified every time I publish a new tasting so that you can't miss any of them. If you have any questions or if you have any comments, do please pop them in the comments box below. I'd love to know what you think about the wines I'm talking about, the tastings I'm doing, or anything else that relates to them. So thank you so much for taking the time to watch. I do hope that maybe you'll manage to make some time in the near future. Come and join me for another tasting. Until then, bye for now.